thinking. Oh, we're live. How are
Hey,
you doing, Miss Donella?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, we were just talking in the back channels, you and I. I really, really feel like I broke into the candy store and took all the best licorice. I don't know if you're a fan of licorice, but I love like black
Black
licorice.
licorice. It's the best.
It's
All you
but
people out there saying no black licorice, no, you can just go.
they have no idea. Like remember the blackjack gum? I don't even know if they make it anymore.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It was like it's a licorice flavored gum. Oh, my favorite.
Yum.
Anyhow, that's what I feel like. Like I just broke into the candy store and got all the licorice because you people, folks out there in the Omniverse, first let us know if you're out there. Um, this is the first time Donella and I have ever even had like a conversation where we could hear each other's voice and see each other's faces, which for me is the ultimate. So
It's cool. It's super
yeah, so Donella, could you like let the people know who you are? What do they need to know about you?
cool. Well, I am a home remodeling contractor in the Minneapolis area, and I've been in construction, designing, remodeling homes for 25 years. And about 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I started my own design build remodeling company. So I'm a general contractor, building contractor, it's called in Minnesota.
Right.
And currently, I'm the only one in my company. I do all of the things.
Everything.
I, of course, hire out the specialty trades and those kinds of things, but I design every project. I run every job. The only thing I don't do is my own taxes. I have a CPA. Because
I don't want to think about them.
it's right around the corner. It's right around the corner, and I don't like that feeling. But you know what? When we do things on the up and up, we don't have to worry about it. It's just a pain.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
So anyway, that's sort of my background. And on the side of that, I'm currently sort of staging my company for growth. I need to hire some people. I need to make sure that I am ready for that.
Okay.
My brain and in my pocketbook and all of the things. And so, I'm just really working on all of that and gearing up for some growth here, because there's just so much more that I want to do, and I can't do it alone. So
yeah, and I'll say you're an amazing person. Like we connected via LinkedIn. I'm hyperactive on LinkedIn. I got to see some of your posts. You're like ultra supportive. So thank you for like interacting and commenting and having the conversations. It's clear to the post, the one that I remember the most, I think it was you moving gravel. So you've got like a cabin somewhere and like you got the wheelbarrow full and back and forth. Like, my good, like I know what that work feels like. I'm like,
yeah.
man, but the lesson, the story you shared with that was like amazing. I was like, man, okay. I need to spend some time with Miss Donella because she got it going on.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
That was 10 yards of rock, by the way.
Oh my, no.
Yeah.
That's a lot of darn work. Oh, look, we got a fan.
Oh, yay.
Mr. Josh.
Hey, Josh is here.
He says, finally, Donella is live. Yes, sir.
Yay.
Josh is damn good people, man. How you doing, brother? He had a post recently where his like whole office was in the playpen.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. My
life. Great idea.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. I think I named this conversation influence or manipulation just because I figured that would get people's attention. But the gist of this came from a post I made a couple weeks back about asking for permission as a tactic or a way to get people's buy-in or to start cultivating buy-in with the thing. And you came back with a beautiful, well-framed, well-stated response. It's like, are we coddling people's egos? And referred me to Miss Irene Walsh Garcia's post, which was an amazing post. Anyhow, so you and I were like kind of communicating in the replies, the chat of that video. And I'm like, man, this is a hairy topic. Like, let's pick it apart. And so, folks, that's what we're here today. So again, Josh is out there. Thanks for commenting. Josh says, I'm everywhere. Jesse and Donello are. Hell yeah, Josh. Thank you. So if y'all are out there, hit us with your questions, your insights, and your thoughts. We don't have an agenda. We just kind of I just wanted to meet Donella and then have a conversation about interesting things. So on the idea of coddling people's egos, where's that coming from, Miss Donella?
Well, so my response to your post was, I think something along the lines of, oh, we've got some conflict here because I've got two posts in my feed today and they're saying similar things, but in a very different direction. And so I thought I'd just engage that a little bit. And basically what it was is Irene had posted about women in construction, or just really women in life, having to play the game, learning how to play the game. And women will know what I mean by that. We have to, I think Meryl Streep put it really well when she said that women have to learn how to speak men, but men don't really learn how to speak women. And that's sort of the gist of playing the game. And one of the things that Irene brought up was, like, we have to sort of tiptoe around the guys in the field and, not really have to be kind of like massaging of their egos in order for them to hear us, or to not offend their, I'm going to be very sarcastic here, but delicate sensibilities and to that kind of thing. And I have experienced that on many occasions, both in the field, in the office, just in life. And what your post was saying was, hey, let's be a little bit nicer. Let's ask people for permission to give them some input and that kind of thing. And I was really seeing both of those posts in the same feed at the same time. And I was like, oh, okay, this is in direct contrast, because perhaps Jesse doesn't know what we're experiencing on our end. And what it makes me think of is what Irene and I were talking about with having to play this game around male egos. Is that a women and men thing, or is that a men thing? Is that a everyone thing? And so, because one of the things that I had brought up with Irene was, it happens with women too. I mean, we cut each other down all the time too. And so just kind of bringing those conversations together. And so my question to you is, do you see what Irene and I are seeing?
Oh, I love it. The challenging question. Hang on. I'm going to throw a banner out there to see what people think out in the Omniverse. And so the question for you folks, amazing folks out there, we got Miss Maria Martin says she thinks this is the first time catching a Depth Builder live. And actually, Donella, this is the first Depth Builder live stream I've ever done. So thank you. So cool. I'm telling you, I got
That's amazing. Thanks for having me.
And then we got another fellow construction advocate, pioneer, world shaker. Gianluca says, two awesome industry peeps. Thank you, Mr. Gianluca. And so the question of the folks out there in the world, is it a women and men thing? And so this is gonna be hairy, and I love it so much.
Lay it out.
I really appreciate, I feel like you're objectively interested in knowing, not assigning blame and all of that, right? So thank you so much for that. You said that women have to learn how to speak men. I will agree with that in the workspace. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not advocating for it. I agree that that is true primarily, or rather I'll say it, I've seen that most prominently in the workspace. Now, men have to learn how to speak women outside of the workplace. And so what do I mean by that? Like subtle cues, subtle hints, like all these veiled expectations. I know I'm using extreme language, but in my personal relationships, romantically, family, etc., outside of the workspace, I really struggle because I don't understand what the hell the woman wants me to do. Right? I'm hearing words, I'm hearing thoughts. I'm not hearing a request or a directive. Does that make sense?
It totally does. It totally does. And what I will say to that is, I don't think it's just like, I think both of these things are happening in the workplace and in private.
Fair.
And I'm going to give a little aside is that my dog is outside my office door and she's whining. So if you hear her, it's my dog, not some other weird thing.
So things are good. Yeah, nobody's being tortured over there. Got it.
She's being tortured by not being able to be a part of this. And one recommendation that I will make is a book that I didn't read, I listened to, called This Is How Your Marriage Ends. And it's a really, like, that's such a daunting title of the book, but it gets your attention, right? Because this is how your marriage ends. He goes through all of these sort of, a lot of the times it's gender assigned, but it's not. I mean, roles can be reversed. We can have same-sex marriages, like all the things, right? So, but it's a really good deep dive into like, hey, hear each other, right? Listen to each other. And these are the ways that we can listen to each other because we don't speak each other's language, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a recommendation for you, because I don't have time to go into all of that right now.
right, of course.
But I guess what I'll say about that is, if I can bring back my processing here, is we have to, what I think is that when we're speaking with each other, whether it's men and women or same gender, whatever, what we need to do is check our egos and really question, like, what filter are we listening through? Are we listening through a filter of defense and fear? Are we listening through a filter of, well, honestly, everything comes back to fear, right? If you're thinking this is going to make me look weak, that's fear. This is going to make me look like I don't know what I'm doing. That's fear. When you get defensive, that's fear coming out. And so that's kind of, if we check what we're listening through, and ask ourselves, am I reacting this way because I'm afraid of what they're questioning? You can answer it in a very different way. I don't know if that actually addresses what you were saying, but that's kind of where I come from.
No, I think it absolutely is connected to the conversation in that. So, back to kind of where with Irene's post and the conversation we're having there, like, yes, I recognize that because of the way a lot of men, and we'll just say the majority of men in the workspace, respond to things, that there is some augmentation that ladies have to do. I mean, they don't have to do, but to minimize friction, if they augment the behavior and the way they talk and the language that they use and the tone that they have, absolutely that happens. Is it okay? No. Right? Like, no, it's not okay. Does it happen? Absolutely. And I'm gonna maybe add some color here from like my perspective. I've gone through a lot of work, right? And when I say work, I mean therapists and all kinds of things to kind of help, training, all kinds of things to help me kind of adjust my lenses to have a more meaningful life, right? I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
Now, for a very long period, I'll say up until maybe my early 30s, I was completely unaware of my biases against women. Like, I just had no idea that I was so, like, if you would have asked me, told me so and so's parent is a doctor, my natural response was, how long has he been a doctor? Right? Like, that was default. I wasn't even aware that my language, like my thinking, always defaulted to the man being in that type of a role. Now, I'll also confess to the world, this is how long I hold on to resentment. I remember the poem when I was in elementary school. There was this little poem that girls were sugar and spice and everything nice, and boys were puppy dog tails and snails or something like that.
Right.
And I didn't like that. Right? Like that I was like, that's not fair, because I'm kind of pretty. I've always been pretty. But right, like I didn't get all those wrinkles back then. And here's another, so there's like some compounding things that I know fed into my, we'll say, chauvinism. Every teacher I had, every model of an adult that I had in my life was a woman, because all the teachers were ladies, right? There might have been 3 or 4 dudes here and there, but not until high school were there more men around. And so I had all these women that were always telling me that I needed to behave, that I was doing it wrong, that I was always being chastised. And so that set this image like, okay, I'm going to get in trouble with them. They're just here to judge me and punish me and ridicule me and minimize me. And then the other layer, like the cherry on top, is there is a tone, and I can always link it back to mom. Mom, I love you. But there is a tone that it's almost a universal tone. And because I can hear it in guys too, that has this passive aggressive, like this thing that I don't know what you're saying, but I know it's not good for me. I know it's going to hurt my feelings. And so all of that was happening during my formative years. Then I get into the workspace, and my natural reaction to tone comes from all of that programming or conditioning from the beginning.
Yeah.
Not an excuse. That's what was happening. And so my natural reaction and response was to be defensive, to be aggressive. And there's something that I read, or no, I don't really read. I either heard it on TikTok or heard it on YouTube. Like, that's my research. And they were talking about the genders and the way they demonstrate aggression. And so dudes, it's physical, right? The threat that we have to offer is a physical threat. If we get to a certain point, we're going to fight. And like, that's how we do things. Ladies, their aggression is in their words. They undermine reputation, they gossip, or passive aggressive conversation. Now, that's super, super general.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of aggression and the physical size of people, guys are going to fight. Ladies fight different, but they fight. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's like freaking, yes, I get it. But anyways, summary, for me early on, that was my problem, is that I had all this baggage from all these women that I had interacted with as a child when I didn't have influence. Now I have influence, and I was going to stand my ground. Mm-hmm. How does that land with you?
I think it's great that you want to stand your ground. I think when people have conviction and they want to say, this is what I think, this is what my experience is, what I believe, more power to them.
Yeah.
As long as they're not, hurting anyone. Right. And So if we go back to your description of like your formative years, your teachers were women, they told you you need to behave, you need to do this differently, critiquing you, all of that. My experience was similar in that they were mostly women, and that they were always telling me that I was doing it wrong, to talk too much in class.
Yep.
And my dog is getting louder. Talk too much in class. Distracted easily. Don't do your homework. All the things, right? Because the school wasn't built for me. I wasn't built for school. However you want to look at it. That's another conversation that we can have. But the way that impacted me was not women suck, women are out to get me. It's authority, just authority. And call it, entrepreneurialism at a young age. I don't know, but I have never really been, looking back at my life growing up and in school and, being employed and all of the things, I've never really fit into situations where I had to like do one thing or sit at a desk or, and I think that a lot of people in construction are very, very similar.
Oh, 100%.
We want to be moving. We want to be doing all the different things. We want to, be creative, and we want to be able to have some influence over a lot of different things. And it took me too long to figure that out. But so that's how that played out for me, is authority. So then I get into the workplace, and while I've always been told by coworkers, employers, whatever, that I'm even right out of college or even in high school, like, you're very professional, you're, put together, all the things. I still had some things in my mind that were not really working well. Right. And so as far as being in certain situations, and now it's construction, so you find yourself in actual bad situations.
Yes.
And again, that's a conversation for another day. But when we're talking about, just truly well-meaning people doing their jobs, that's what we're talking about today, is how do we approach people, and how is it different between managers and employees, women and men to women? What is that interaction, and how does it differ? And what I would say is my experience of trying to give feedback to men is, let's start with my experience of trying to give feedback to women.
Okay.
Because we speak a similar language, right? I've never really spoken women in the sense that, like, that I'm not a gossip. I'm not a, like, I don't want to cut people down. I don't have time for that. Like, I don't care. I don't want that in my life, because, I'm not going to go this way if I'm doing this to other people. So,
yes.
And it's just not nice. I never understood it. Even like when we were kids and my sisters would pick on me, I was like, why? Like, I just didn't get it. And so giving feedback to women coming from a woman is, a lot of times it can have some complication in there too, just depending on where everybody's backgrounds are coming from. But what I find is that like you said, there's like it's in our communication. And what I find is that it's much easier to give feedback to women when it's coming from a woman. And what I've also find is that taking feedback from women is a lot easier as well, because when it comes from a man, it feels, and I'm not going to say that mansplaining does not exist, but it feels like that's there kind of almost as a constant. And we're constantly like deciphering whether is this mansplaining or is this constructive feedback, and what do I do with this, and how seriously do I take this, and do I, what do I do with it? Where when I'm giving feedback to men, I feel like there is a very distinct difference in that I have to really make sure I'm not hurting the ego.
Yeah.
And listen, I have enough of an ego of my own. So I'm not saying that men are the ones with the egos. There is plenty of ego with women. But for whatever reason, it feels like, if I am, let's say I'm reviewing a design for a house with a male project manager, there's a lot of sort of coming at me with, you don't know what it's like. You don't know how to build it on site. You're not there. So you don't understand that we need more information. We need this to be different, whatever it is. And I've always been open to that, but I also am like, there's only so much you can put on a plan. Right?
You want to build it for you? Yeah.
Right. And I've also been told like, hey, there's too much on this plan. I can't even read it. It's like, well, what do you want? Right.
Yes.
And so there's kind of that. And then there's also, now that I own my own company, and I am managing the job site, if I'm on site with, a carpenter trade partner, whatever, and I'm relaying like, this isn't done the way the plan says, or this needs to be done better. I really have to be careful about how I present that information, because not only is it a volatile kind of situation because there's ego involved and there's less experience with this specific thing that's involved, but there's also like, worker shortage. Like, what do you do if they get mad and leave?
Yes.
You're screwed. So
yes.
There's a lot of that, that happens. And your post and your commentary on, let's ask for permission before we give people feedback. And I think what I said was like, I think there's semantics here, because I'm not really asking you to do it. I'm telling you that this is, I'm not saying, are you okay with changing this or doing it better? I'm saying this needs to be done better. And sometimes we just have to say, this needs to be done better. It's not up to the standards. And I feel like where you were coming from was like, how do we relay that information in a way that they hear it?
Oh, I love it. I love it. So thank you for like really helping us, walking us through your thinking, because I think it's going to help people. And I'm grateful to you, like for real, Donella, to be willing to have this conversation in an objective and real way, not an accusational defense. This is so beautiful. I love it. And so Renee even says, I love this deep, raw, important discussion. So yes, we do too, Renee.
Yeah.
Now, so I want to address the ego thing, and then I'll add color. And well, maybe here's the hook. It's situational, right? You mentioned that there's semantics. I'm like, I don't think there's semantics. I think it's really about situational awareness. We'll come back to that. I don't know if you know this or not, and I think many people out there in the Omniverse know that I am a master liar and a master manipulator. I spent a large part of my life being a black hole of need, manipulating anybody I came into contact with to get what I wanted. For real. And there were two things that I leveraged, and one was for men and one was for women. It is going to be really ugly, but it's the truth. When I needed to or wanted to manipulate a man to get what I wanted, I fed his ego. Straight up, 100%. I fed the ego, and I'm still that way. Like, "Ooh, dude," like I don't even say I turn into a big dummy all of a sudden because somebody's feeding my ego. And I know that that's the thing, but afterwards I'm like, son of a gun, it happened again.
Right.
Like it's a weakness. Feed my ego, and I've done it for years. Feed a man's ego, you're going to get what you want from him. The tactic I used for women was give attention. And by attention, I mean it looked like listening because I wasn't saying words, but I just didn't say words. And that was enough for me to be different. Right.
Yeah.
And so my point in sharing that is that, yes, the point you're making about the ego thing being true is 100% accurate. I know because I've exploited that. On the other side, I think also falls in the ego because why do I have to be quiet in order for you to be valued or feel valued? There's an ego thing there, right? And I'm saying you generally speaking.
Yeah.
And I leveraged the living hell out of that, and it was unhealthy and self-destructive time in my life. Anyways, I now use my powers for good, right?
We'll see about that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. At least on social media, I make it look like I do. So in turn, like my post, the name, like the title I had on the video was "Ask for Permission," and you made a beautiful delineation. I'm going to dig into that. There are situations. So when somebody is in non-compliance and somebody is doing something wrong, I am not at all advocating for saying, "Hey, Donella, may I give you some feedback on that?" Because it's not feedback. Feedback is something you get to choose to take or not. I am going to say, Donella, you failed to meet the expectation. This was the request. This is what you delivered. What are we going to do to correct it? It must be corrected. That's not feedback. That is a corrective conversation, right? That's a performance conversation.
Yep.
Now, so for clarity, in those situations where people have deviated or failed, I like to use the word failed and deviated so that it's clear that this isn't a feedback, I'm going to pad your feelings conversation. Is that difficult? Yes. For men? Yes. For ladies? Yes. It hurts. And I don't mean it as a judgment. I use that kind of language so that it's anchoring language, so that we know, like, ooh, okay, now I know when I screw up, that's what it's going to feel like.
Yeah.
Now, the feedback idea that I'm one of the tactics that I use, so maybe high level, is I separate the idea of feedback and performance conversations. Those are two separate things. And so in the video I was talking about asking for permission, the scenario, and because of the work that I do, right? I'm a consultant, and so I get invited to see behind the curtains and under the bed. And so I don't have the formal authority to come in there and tell people that they're shit in the bed, right? Like and it's not appropriate for me to do that. So I have to lead by influence. And so in those situations, I will ask for permission, like, "Hey, Donella, I noticed this thing. May I share an observation with you?"
Okay.
So that you get to say, "Yeah," or "No, I don't really care what you think." Awesome. Now move on. And so in those circumstances, in those situations where I may be going out of bounds in terms of the formal power dynamic, my tactic is to ask for permission, so that I could say, "Hey, can I look at your work? Can I give you some points, some things that I noticed? I'd like to share them with you because it might make your day better." Because of the lack of formal authority in that relationship. Another thing, let me pause on that other thing. What do you think? Like, does that help at all? Or does it feel like I'm tap dancing?
No, it's a really good distinction. Because I do the same thing. You know, it's either this needs to be changed because it's wrong, whatever, or and I approach it a little bit differently. I don't typically say, like, "Can I give you feedback?" I more say, I'd like to give you feedback.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's my way of being able to assert a little more, not authority, but more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not influence, but experience, whatever, be able to assert that a little bit more heavily than I would if I was asking permission, especially if I was asking permission to a man. And that part of it, I think, is really a clear male-female thing. Because if let's say I'm, giving feedback to, or making a comment or whatever to a worker on a job site that is a female, I probably I wouldn't even really think as much about it, about how I would approach it. I would just, hey, you know what? Let's talk about this. And here's what I'm seeing, and I would really love to see this differently. Or, can we talk about how we might set this up differently so that you have better success next time, whatever. And I have the same kind of conversation with men. It's a lot more approachable with women for the most part. But again, like I said, there are different dynamics, and it's not always gender. Because I can see a lot of the same, ego tendencies and things like that with certain women. And there's also some men that I'm like, wow, you're super sensitive and easy to talk to, Totally. And so there's a lot, it just kind of depends on the person. But I think until you really get to know people and there's a lot of trust built up, and B, some people just have the way of being. You really do have to figure out how you want to approach things.
Yes. And actually, let me share this, because Maria, I love, because she colors it up with emojis and everything. It's all science, and yes, it comes back to fear, and it's predominantly men that I tailor my speech for, and that's a lot of women. And there's a lot of women I tailor my speech for. Depends on how deeply the person has met themselves. Which I think, for me, kind of connects back to my big excuse, right, of the snails and puppy dog tails. There was a lot of inner work I had to do to be able to be approachable and not, or do less of what I used to do in terms of letting my ego govern every interaction I had with every damn human being in the world. And so that's helped tremendously. Now, my point is this: I know what it feels like to suppress what is natural to me for the sake of somebody else's damn feelings. And that is not okay. Right? What do you think?
It's not okay. And it's the same. I think this is a conversation that happens a lot in the circles of women, especially women who are assertive and, driven and eager and all of the things. Is being called too much and loud and too bossy and too whatever. And this is a theme that runs in basically all the conversations that women have. But I think that it also applies to men in some way. I mean, I'm sure that you have been told by your kindergarten teacher and your wife or whoever, and
all my exes.
Dial it back. It's not appropriate, whatever it is. And some of it, as we're growing up, it's not appropriate. We have to learn how to temper the things that we want to say in order for an audience to hear it. And which is one of the things that one of the full circle points that you're bringing up is like, do we want people to hear us, or do we want them to hate us? Right.
Yeah.
But that is a major theme, is when people have a lot to say and no one seems to be listening, you're too much. You're too loud. You talk too much. It's I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And I think what I would like to impart on anyone who's listening to us right now is, if you are in a situation that you are suppressing who you are and suppressing anything about the person that you truly are and where you want to be in life and what you want to do, stop doing that. Just stop doing it. It's really hard. But it's where that place that you feel like you are, where you're not being your true self and you're not living your true passions or reasons for being, that's where anxiety, depression, really dark stuff comes from. I think that when people, I mean, you've mentioned that, you know, you've done the therapy and you've done a lot of work and you've dug deep. And I think that those of us who've done that kind of thing, who have been in that dark place, maybe multiple times, and we've, you know, clawed our way out, we're all out here saying, like, stop being quiet.
Yeah.
You know, and our too much that we used to be to everybody is now like, I don't even care if I'm too much. I don't care if I'm too loud. I don't care if I'm saying something that you don't like. I'm just going to say it, because otherwise that starts to happen. Like, I start to feel like I'm not being who I need to be, and I'm not living the purpose that I am here for. And we just need to stop doing that. Just stop doing it.
Yes. And I'll reinforce that with the reason why we need to stop, or maybe I'll say it this way. What I discovered from taking my foot off the brake and putting it on the gas, what I discovered was that helped me find the people that can deal with me, that can help me grow and thrive. By taking my foot off the gas and slamming on the brakes, that ensured that I was going to be around people that told me I was too much, that told me I was doing it wrong. And I mean, another simpler way to think of this is, you're not defective. You just need to find your people. And the only way to find your people is to be as much of you as you can possibly be. And it's not easy. Like, it's easy to say it now, but I know what it was like, you know, back in the day when I had to like suppress and behave. And, you know, for me, I don't know if you noticed, but I got a spectacular tan. And so that created a power dynamic in a lot of situations. And in those situations, if I got a little too mouthy, if I got a little too wordy, I was out of place. And so I had to tweak that and adjust the knobs, and it was not fun, but I had to play the game. And so, you know, I want to make that point too, is the game may suck. So I have two choices. I learn how to play the game, or I create my own game. I am in a point in my life where I'm creating my own game. And I only started doing that about 4 years ago. Not everybody is there. How did I get to the point where I could create my own game? I played the game, and little by little started pushing the boundary and pushing the boundary and pushing the boundary to where I was like, okay, this is taking way more effort than necessary. What if I just go create my own game? And then I did. And so I know that's maybe metaphorical, but that is my recommendation. Ooh, look, I got some props. Miss Sarah, what's up, Sarah? Bring out she says, create your own game. And then one point I want to make, and then we'll wrap this up. Miss Heather, how you doing, Miss Heather? She's amazing too. Like, I got to meet her in person, Danila, so she's special like you are, in that she wasn't terrified to spend time with me. Heather says, clear is kind, and you can be clear without being mean or rude. Clear equals everyone understanding expectations. I agree. And so one thing that I had to learn, and for folks out there that are listening, this was a big game changer for me, is there's a lot of things that bug me, right? The way people do things. Yeah, there's a lot of things that bug me. Now, there was a period of my life where I believed it was my duty to let everybody know how we can do everything better. People did not appreciate that, right? Like, it was unsolicited advice all the damn time, right?
It was For me, it was like, just like, it was a compulsion.
Right.
Oh, you're having a problem. Let me tell you how to fix it. Oh, you don't know how to do this? Oh, let me tell you. Ugh, we're in the same.
Right. And so the reason I'm pointing that out, like in Jesse Land, that's known as solutionizing or solution shanking, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the answer. You didn't even ask for it, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. Because I mean, look at me, I got it going on. And so sometimes, rather, I'll say it this way: when I was in my addiction to solutionizing and solution shanking, I was creating the negative response from people. I was building the blocks for them to be defensive and off put. Like, it's unattractive.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started working on, like, sure, I have some insight, but do they even want it?
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually going to do anything with it? If not, why the hell am I going to say it? They didn't act like, just so I think there's a middle step in there. Like, yeah, playing the game and contorting my natural behaviors. And there's this thing in the middle where maybe I'm overbearing. Like, I'm getting all up in people's face with critiquing and judging and giving them advice, and they never asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started managing that, the clarity started happening. Like, oh, this is an ego thing. I got to play the game. Oh no, this is really a place that I should demonstrate respect by saying, hey, may I share an observation with you?
Mm-hmm.
And they get to say no. And when they say no, say, cool, no problem, man. Thanks. And
Right.
move on. What do you think?
I think there's, I totally agree. And I think that there's also another level there of some people just want to complain. Like they just want to talk about their problems, but they don't really want to do anything about it. Or perhaps they're just not there yet.
Yes.
When you're working on something really tough, like especially inner work and kind of figuring out how to be around people, humans on the planet, that's like really hard work to kind of get yourself out of your usual tendencies. And when people are doing that work, it's hard. And it's layers, it's an onion. You have to keep peeling back and peeling back. There's realizations, and then living with those realizations and figuring out how to be in the world with that knowledge, and then peeling another onion layer. And it just keeps going like that. And sometimes we're at the core of the onion and they're still kind of out on the outside, and they just need that time to be able to just be there, and we can provide whatever support or whatever needs they have within what you're comfortable doing. And then maybe once they get there, they'll be like, you know what, I know that you have experience with this, can you help me?
Right.
But if we just say like, oh, you don't want what I have to say, goodbye, then we're not being helpful either. And so I just think it's just really meeting people where they're at, because not everybody's at the same stage. I have a sort of a credo that I live by, which is be who you needed when you were younger. Because there's a lot of times when I was younger that I needed somebody or something and I wasn't getting it. And so when I approach things in that way, and when I feel like I am having this this compulsion to interject myself on someone else's problem, I just think, where was I, or what was I thinking when I first came with a certain problem or whatever, and just meeting people where they're at and being where they need what they need you to be, rather than what I need to be for them. And that's a huge paradigm shift that took me again so many lessons. It took way too long to learn, but we're here now. So
yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay, so here's the Jesse kindergarten version of what I think I heard is: be present and available for people that want to solve a problem, or for when they want to solve a problem, not necessarily for people that want attention about their problem.
There you go. Yep.
Because that, for me, that's like, I'm here. I want to support and contribute into people's lives as much as they'll let me.
Mhm.
But if all you want is attention for your problem, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And just like you said, the paradigm shifts, the change in identity, the growth, all the onion peeling, all of that happens at different rates for different people. And so that's the idea, like be present and available. You may not be psychotic in terms of taking action the way I do, or as risk tolerant as I am. And I get that. And so, we've got to be graceful with each other. I'm going to ask you the closing question. You ready?
Yeah.
So for all the dudes out there, or any of the dudes out there that want to do better around this hypersensitivity and maybe behaving in a way that causes ladies to have to walk on eggshells, what do you recommend?
Can I give advice for both sides?
Absolutely, yes.
Are you interested in advice for both sides? May I give advice for both sides? So for the women, I'll start there. One of the things that I have found is that I get far better response from men when I show them that I'm doing the work. So for instance, if I'm wanting, let's say, a plumber to not go home early so that we can keep the schedule, right? And, draw it out for one more day. It goes a really long way if I'm also on the job site doing the thing that's going to further the job along. If I come there and I say for 5 minutes and say, what do you mean you're not going to be ready tomorrow? And then I leave and I berate them, or if I say, stop screwing up my schedule. You're ruining it. And then I leave. He's going to pack up his stuff and he's going to come back tomorrow morning, and he's probably not going to get there until 11. So, and if I look back, if I really examine that, I don't blame him one bit. But if I'm saying, you know what, it would really, really help me out. It would help the clients out, and it would help all the other team members that are coming after you out if you just, put in the 2 hours to just get it done today. And tell you what do you need? What can I help you with? What can I do? What can I move out of your way? Whatever. And if they don't need anything from me, they just need a couple extra hours to do exactly what they're doing, then maybe I'm on the other side of the house and I'm doing something else that I need to get done so that then the electrician is ready. Whatever it is, when you put in the work, they see that, and it's sort of this concrete, like, yeah, she's doing it. That is not just a men and women thing. They want to see men doing that too.
Yes.
So, so maybe you're not an on the job site worker, right? You're not a project manager that's on the job site. You're doing, make them feel your presence in whatever way, like make them know that you're not just going to leave and go golfing or whatever it is. Because that's really important to people who are on the job site to see that you're doing your part, and vice versa. I mean, people in the office want to know that the people in the field are doing the work, not just complaining about it, right? So it goes both ways. But I feel like that's really strong with men, is show me that you're doing the work, and I'll have a lot more respect for what you're trying to ask me.
Yeah.
When it comes to the reverse, so advice for men to speak women. I think the biggest bit of advice that I can give is to just really check where your response is coming from. Is your response coming from your ego or your fear of looking weak because a woman told you what to do? Or is it she doesn't really know what she's talking about because this, and this, in which case, don't just say whatever and go do what you're doing anyway. Explain in a non like condescending or mansplaining way, you know what? That's a problem because this, and this. So now we can come together and we can come up with that plan. We'll figure out how to get it done. We'll figure out whatever it is. But it just having a response of like, no, or get out of my space, or you don't know what I'm talking about, whatever it is, that's not appropriate in any situation.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of those are the little bits.
I love it. And I agree. I concur. That's what I'll say. I concur. Because yes. So folks out there, if you're not connected with Miss Donella on the LinkedIn, you need, hopefully you know by now that you need to be connected with her. Sarah, Maria, Heather, Renee, Gianluca, Josh, everybody that supported this conversation. Thank you for that. And the one thing I'll add, and may I share some advice?
Please.
The one thing that I have done that has worked tremendously for me, it's two parts, is listen more and ask more questions. Those little things, listening more than I talk and asking questions when I don't understand, for both sexes has transformed my life. And by transform, I mean minimize the amount. All of a sudden, people were smarter than they used to be.
Imagine that. Imagine that. People are smarter than Jesse. What?
Oh, so thank you again, Don. This was amazing. Thank you for your courage. And everybody else, we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
We're hitting the end, and there's like a delay.